Hi, everybody. Welcome to Working with a Medical Illustrator. I'm Dr. Dina Kurzweil, and I'm very pleased today to welcome Mr. Michael Gallagher, USUHS's official medical illustrator. He's going to cover what it means to work with a medical illustrator today. Just want to let everybody know that we are recording this, and we will be taking questions at the end. So please be sure to jot down any questions you may have, and I will turn it over to Mr. Gallagher.
Thank you, Dina, for that great introduction. Again, my name is Michael Gallagher. I'm the medical illustrator with ETI, and today we're going to be talking about working with the medical illustrator and specifically the ETI medical illustrator with USUHS. As far as goals and objectives of this talk, it's to inform you viewers of medical illustration services and project processes specifically with ETI. And to achieve those goals, we're going to speak a little bit about the background of a medical illustrator, what makes a medical illustrator. And then we're going to talk about medical illustration services with ETI. It's not just illustrations, it's a lot more than that. And then we're going to give, or I'm going to give a very short 10,000 foot view of a workflow of medical illustration and animation project with ETI. In order to achieve those objectives, this talk is going to be broken down into three parts. The first part is what is a medical illustrator? And this is basically going to be what separates a medical illustrator from a non-medical illustrator. And then why use a medical illustrator? It's kind of how to take advantage of the medical illustrator skills and experience that I have and how to put that to use for your next project. And then we're going to talk about working with a medical illustrator, which is the project process where we're going to walk through a very short overview of a illustration and animation project because they are kind of unique processes. What makes a medical illustrator? Well, it's similar to any other profession. It's mostly it's your education and it's your experience. As far as education, I've got a master's in medical illustration. There are 5 degree granting institutions in North America that have masters in medical illustration programs. I'm a graduate of UIC. There are undergraduate programs as well, but those are more science-based or like broad-based science, and medical illustration is just a subset. But these graduate programs are specifically for medical illustration, and you'll see how intense they are, why they are specifically geared towards medical illustration. There are 2 sides or aspects to the education, or main aspects, and one of them is science, of course. There's a lot of work that we do. It involves anatomy. We have gross anatomy cadaver labs that we, full-on dissections that we have for classwork. There's also classwork in physiology, in pathology, and microbiology as well. It's not limited to gross anatomy. These are common core requirements that all those institutions that I showed you earlier, they all have. There's also additional science coursework that we have. At UIC, I also studied embryology, histology, neuroanatomy, and some other courses as well. The other aspect of the education is the art side of it. Of course, the studio arts include illustration, and this isn't limited to surgical illustration or anatomical illustration. It's also illustration for patient education and general illustration as well. And it covers everything from microbiology to gross anatomy as well. We have coursework in 2D animation as well. And then 3D modeling and animation. This is separate because 3D modeling can include digital models for physical models that people create for education purposes. And then also 3D models used for animation, which is much different than for a production model. And then we also have classwork in graphic design, and this includes user experience, infographics, web design, as well as traditional graphic design. As far as professional experience goes, everyone has different paths. There's lots of different areas. You can go into medical legal, you can go into advertising, you can go into education. I started out working at GPI Anatomicals, which is a 3D model company. They create anatomical models. And they're basically models for student education, for patient education, and for education of sales force of both the pharma and the medical device industry. And sometimes we did surgical trainers as well. Next, I worked as a medical illustrator for different surgical staffs at MD Anderson. I was with their plastic and reconstructive surgery group. And then also at Northwestern Medicine, I was in the neurological surgery group. And with those different departments, I worked with everyone from faculty to students, to administrators, to nurses, to researchers, producing illustrations for journals, textbooks, grants, posters, animations for presentations, all sorts of things. Whatever they needed, I was kind of a jack of all trades in some sorts. In addition to my education and professional experience, there's a couple organizations that I belong to. One is the Association of Medical Illustrators, which is a great group of professionals that get together once a year for an annual conference, and we discuss different techniques. They offer throughout the year classwork on, like I said, techniques, technology, different aspects of the industry. They also offer something called a medical certification. It's a board certified medical illustrator, which I have, and this involves an exam of both science, art, and business. And then there's also a portfolio review as well. There is another group called the Guild of Natural Science Illustrators, and they're more broad-based, and medical illustration is just a subset. But these organizations are great because they provide continuing education and lets me keep current with everything that's happening in the industry. So now that you know what makes a medical illustrator, or kind of how we're a little bit different than a non-medical illustrator, I'm going to cover a little bit about why you would want to work with us. The benefits of working with the medical illustrator, well, as you might have learned, we have familiarity with medical content and terminology. This is really helpful to facilitate projects. We speak your language, so it's definitely an asset. We know what questions to ask if something's not clear about something that we're seeing, or a presentation or something like that. We can ask questions about where there might be some loose ends. And as mentioned, that we help facilitate projects. It's not just limited to the illustrations. There's any sort of medical related project that comes through ETI. We can help facilitate projects. We can answer medical information so that it speeds up the project process, and so that we're not asking you a million questions. Some of them can be headed off or kind of nipped in the bud with a medical illustrator. And I have to add that I am not a subject matter expert. That would be you, but we certainly help out wherever we can. What can a medical illustrator do? Well, we are here to simplify or clarify. If you've got an image that's not quite 100%, or it's got too much information, we can take it out. We can add in information. We can do this to your, in a broader sense, to your presentations as well. We help you visualize a concept. If you're, for the visual learners in your group, there's a lot of people that they can read something, but it makes much more sense if you see a picture of something. That's extremely helpful in the learning process. And certainly if you are gesturing and waving your hands during your presentation, then that's a good indicator that you need a medical illustration. And then we also are here to help you develop a concept, and it could be anything. It doesn't matter, or it doesn't necessarily need to be a specific illustration, but you can say, hey, I'm having trouble communicating X, Y, or Z, and we can help you develop an idea, or help you out, resolve that problem, and come up with a tangible end product. So there's many ways to work with the medical illustrator. One is just general consultation. It's good to meet with us to discuss any sort of idea. And like I mentioned, we can help you realize your ideas and bring it to life. We can also review your content. If you've got lectures, course materials, we can find areas of opportunity. We can help tighten up your presentations, or help you out with any sort of difficulties that you might be having. And then we can help you generate ideas. If you're stuck and you need a new approach, we can certainly help you come up with new ideas to approach old problems or even new problems. What is our delivery? Well, the end product is what we call a visually based learning tool. This is not necessarily an illustration. It's anything that's visually based. It could be an animation. It could be something else. It could be a handout. It includes graphics. Like I mentioned, it could be a handout. It could be a booklet. It could be, an infographic. It could be a poster. It might be an illustration. That's certainly obviously what we can do. It could be an animation as well. Sometimes animations are more helpful, especially if it's a process, to see things that are happening in not necessarily in real time, but how step by step they go through and how things interact and work with each other. And then we also do videos as well. And when I say videos too, it can mean a combination of the above as a multimedia kind of presentation where we mix in live action or people and photography, a video that we shoot, and we can add in the graphics, the illustration, the animation, and create a whole multimedia tool. So hopefully you get the idea that we do make illustrations, but we are more than just a pretty picture, of course, but we do make pretty pictures. So I'm going to show you some samples just so you get a general idea of capabilities if you're unsure of them. We do traditional medical illustration. I guess that this is certainly in my mind, when somebody says medical illustration, this is kind of the image that comes up in my head. We could do very detailed illustrations. We could, as I mentioned before, we could add in any sort of structures, take them out, clean up any sort of images that you might have from anatomy lab and you want to show in a clear and precise manner. We can add in labeling, any sort of things along those line, graphics kind of stuff. For sure. Doesn't have to be the full-blown rendered illustration that you saw before. They can be simple graphic illustrations, as you see on the right. A lot of times just, things that are simplified are a lot more clearer and easier to learn. And they could also be hybrids. On the left, you see, a very rendered brain. And then the homunculus is just a very simple line drawing, but it helps communicate what it is that you're trying to express. Also, it's not just limited to anatomy and the traditional ideas. We can show physiology. We can show step by step. On the right, we've got a mechanism of swallowing, and which shows you all the different moving parts that are involved when you swallow. It's a complex process, and it shows all the different parts, as I mentioned. And then on the left, there's just a simple illustration of a neuropathway. Pathology is a good area to have illustrations as well. And I like this because it shows medical illustration as kind of how it's affecting the person. And there are illustrations of people, simple like cartoony drawings, but you get the idea of each different type of seizure. Again, these are really simple line drawings that are effective in communicating the different types of seizures. More pathology here is, I like this because this shows, this is a good example of a way to simplify a very complex thing or a pretty complex image. And on the left, you see a very nice stain of the midbrain, but when you look at it, or when a student looks at it, they aren't going to be able to differentiate the different structures within this slide. And on the right, there's a graphic image that breaks down the slide into the different components, and it shows the students what to look for, and it trains their eye and helps them learn to see these stains or these sections in a different way, and to pull out the unique structures that they should be looking for. We do microbiology as well. I like to stress this because it's a very popular area of growth, I think. And it's different than gross anatomy because it's showing, it's telling bigger stories that are pretty complex. The mode of action and the pathways. We definitely do those kind of illustrations. Sometimes they are so complex that it's best to simplify them, such on the right as just using very simple shapes to communicate the different elements is a very effective way to communicate very complex subject matter. We also do illustration for procedures. They could be as simple as 2 steps shown here in line drawings. It could be a handout of multiple steps. It could be a full book, whatever you think that it takes to tell your story. This is a helpful way of learning. And then general healthcare. This is a blood glucose monitor. I like this project because it shows how the patient interacts with all the different elements of blood glucose monitoring. And this isn't a traditional medical illustration that you'd imagine, but it's certainly medical related, and it involves the patient experience. And then I put together a little demo reel of different animations that we've worked on. We work on, as I said, it's not limited to gross anatomy, could be microbiology. This is a 3D animation. A lot of this is 3D, but the 3D enables us to show multiple views, transparency, different structures within structures. We can do animations for your PowerPoints. It's not limited to just a straight up animation. 3D is great because it gives viewers the full sense of what the object looks like. We can incorporate graphics as well. This is a model that was created from scratch. It can be hard surface models, as this is referred to. It's not always organic models, but we can basically create anything from scratch. Here we show it integrated with the body. And then we have 2D animations. Again, here's the mechanics of swallowing. And then this is what I was talking about before with the video and the multimedia thing, where we have a combination of graphics and 3D. So what does an ETI medical illustrator do? Well, this is very specific because I'm with ETI, and we are not necessarily, I don't like to say limited, but our mission, we are dedicated to our mission and our scope of work. And the one question that we always ask of people is that the end use of this project is for the teaching of USU students. Sometimes we get requests for projects, but are outside of this area, but ETI is limited specifically to teaching of USU students. So if this is an illustration, animation, video, and it's going to be used for teaching of USU students, that's fantastic. We are the people you want to talk to. If it is not for USU students, then I'm going to give you a little information here, a little bonus that I've included. These are for medical illustration services that are outside of the teaching of students. Contact Multimedia Services here at USU. Sophia Eckelmeyer is the point of contact. Here's her email. And you could also find them on the USU internet. Do a search for multimedia services, and that will point you in the right direction for other medical illustrator services outside of student use. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about the workflow of medical illustration and animation. They're a little bit different, but again, this is like a really, I'm painting with a big brush here and describing the process, and it's like, it's very shortened and condensed, but the projects, they start off in a similar manner, and that is with an email. You can email us, eti@usuhs.edu, and introduce yourself and introduce your project or what you'd like to speak with us about. After we get your email, we'll set up a meeting, and at the meeting, there will be a discussion where we can ask you questions about your project. You can ask us questions about the process or how this is going to happen. I can guarantee you that we will probably cover the who, what, where, how, and when, and by who is, again, is this for USU students? Great. And then the what is it that you're looking for? You might know, you might not. Maybe you're looking for an illustration or animation. Maybe it's straightforward. Maybe you haven't decided what it is that you need. The where and how I put together because this is more about where is this or how is this going to be presented? Is this something live? Is it in the classroom? Is it recorded? Is it going to be distributed online? Is it a handout that somebody's going to download? So that's why they're where and how. And then very important is the when. What is the timeline that you're working on? And then either at this point, it's helpful to have examples. If you have something that you're looking for, if you've seen an illustration, if you've seen an animation, if you've seen something, if you could bring in a sample of what you saw that you liked and you would like something in this vein, we can certainly work with that. That's helpful. And then any sort of references are excellent to have. If you've got some sort of great photograph that you took in cadaver lab that you'd like an illustration of, please bring that along. It's extremely helpful to us. After that initial meeting, there is a follow-up, and at that follow-up, we will basically give you a proposal. This might happen as a meeting, it might happen via email, but we'll put together a proposal of what we think is a good solution to what your needs are. There might be some options. It might be, hey, we think an illustration is good now, but in long term, it might be an animation. There might be multiple phases, so there will be options. And then if you're not satisfied or you don't think that your needs are being addressed, we are certainly open to brainstorming different ideas and coming up with a solution that you're happy with and that we're happy with. This is kind of where the paths could diverge a little bit. I'm going to talk first about image-based projects, and that would be illustrations, or I should have said static image-based project, which is an illustration. It starts off with the draft. So this is a sample project, a very basic illustration of lungs. Imagine that you're teaching a class and you want just a simple illustration, or you need an illustration of lungs. It'll start with a sketch. And then once the sketch is approved, or maybe not approved, it might have to go through revisions. The revisions might include some color information, or it might include a little bit more depth or detail or any sort of other anatomical corrections, because as I said, we aren't the subject matter experts. We can get in the ballpark, but final sign off is on you. So we want things to be as accurate as possible, and that's what we look to you for. And then once that draft and the revisions are all approved, we can put together a final. And the final can take on many forms, as you saw earlier by the samples of works. So they could be very simple line drawings, clean black and white images, or they could be more graphic images as shown here, but still conveying the structural information. Or else they could be a little bit more detailed and show just a grayscale image of just showing a little bit more depth and of shape of form, or they could be the full-blown, highly rendered anatomical illustrations as well. Animation-based projects take on a little bit of a different kind of structure, I guess, or a different path. And this is because it involves a story. So once we say, all right, we're going to put together this animation, we either can help you develop your outline or script, or else we can ask that you develop it. If there isn't any sort of voiceover, or there's no narration, or there's no people speaking, it'll just be an outline. And the outline will include how are you going to tell your story? If it's the lungs, is it going to open with a shot of the lungs? And then is it going to, what do the lungs do? Or do you want to show them breathing? What are the different aspects of the story that you're going to tell? And then if there's a script, then you have to create the dialogue, and how are you going to tell your story through dialogue? Next in the process is, once the outline or script is developed, we come up with a storyboard. And what this is for anyone who hasn't seen it, I have an example in the next slide, but it's basically a shot by shot of incorporating an image with the outline of your story. And what I mean by that is, if the direction is, or the step of the story is, show the lungs, then there'll be a picture of the lungs on the screen. And then if it's like show them breathing, it'll show the lungs taking in a breath of air in the next frame. And then once the storyboard is, or sometimes at the same time the storyboard's being developed, we will work on something called style frames. And this is basically the look and the feel of the animation. Is it something cartoony? Is it something more technical? But that's something that we work on as well. To explain the storyboards a little bit, I've created a very simple animation to go along with my simple illustration project, but there's a very simple animation that I did of the lungs. And this is an example of a storyboard, and I'll walk you through it. It's moving from left to right, top to bottom. You see that there's an image. This is what people will see on the screen. There'll be the title of the lungs, and then you'll see the lungs fade in, labels added, and then on the bottom row, you see the direction is to rotate the lungs. And then we have the lungs going transparent, showing the bronchi, and then labels and highlighting the bronchi. So you see how this is kind of like an outline and a shot by shot of what you're going to be seeing on the screen, and what the outline or what the step-by-step of the process is. So once all that is approved, we'll come up with a draft of the animation. And similar to the illustration, this might be a back and forth and might take some time to develop. And then, of course, the final will be made. But here's a sample animation based on that storyboard, just so you get an idea of how they relate to each other. But here's the title, and then the lungs fade in, some labels are added. If I was going to do it again, I'd say they need to pop out a little bit more, and then rotate the lungs so that the viewer has an idea of the volume of the lungs. They go transparent so you can see the bronchi, and then labeling and highlighting of the different bronchi. So that was just so that you get an idea of how the animation relates to the storyboard. Now, if we would love to have you come to us and with your next project, we have some tips for you. We always say start early. Don't start at the end of your project, start at the beginning. We ask this of you because in this way we can deliver high quality project that exceeds your expectations. We also ask that you be open to new ideas or approaches. You might think that the best thing or what you really want or need is X, Y, Z, whatever. But we ask you that you be open to other solutions and other approaches, because we might have ideas and it might be, it's not necessarily better, but it might be different, or we just hope that you're receptive to and flexible to different suggestions or different opportunities to take advantage of. And then we ask that you think big, take things to a new level. If there's a project you've always wanted to do or something that you've always been imagining, and would love to see it come to fruition, then please come to us. We really love a challenge, and we'd like to help you deliver a fantastic learning tool. So thank you. Here's where to contact us. We hope to hear from you very soon for your next project.
Thank you for watching today's Teaching with Technology Brown Bag session. You can view all Teaching with Technology Brown Bags on the USU YouTube channel under the full ETI playlist. Have a nice day.